Hi, folks. This show is going to be different from any show I've ever done. Um, I'm going to share with you what I've done. There's something that I've known about for probably almost 50 years that's happening now. And what is it? We're at that point in time where we're having a geological event that I knew was coming, that God had showed me, where basically the entire world is experiencing unparalleled numbers of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. And God has had this on my heart for probably 6 weeks now. Go back in, because I studied geology a long, long time ago. I didn't know why, but I did. And here we are. So basically, I felt like for weeks now, God's been saying, tell the people what's going on. Because the news isn't going to do it. What the news does is it gives you a report. Oh, this happened in California, that happened in Florida. They don't tie it together. They don't tie it into what is happening geopolitically in the world and what God's plan is for mankind. So what I'm going to do is give you the benefit to about 50 hours of my research, where I went out and laboriously watched clip after clip after clip after clip, trying to put together a compilation for you that would bring all the disparate pieces together so that you could have an idea of what happens. You're going to know where the greatest catastrophes are going to happen. You're going to know where, within general parameters, where the safe places are going to be. You're going to know the sequence in which it is predicted that these earth changes are going to happen. And as you see the first one or two happen, then hopefully, if we're right on track, that will give you a warning for where the next one and the next one and the next one is going to go. Because what God is telling me is he has his elect. He has the people that he wants to see come through this. So it's like in the Bible. 1,000 can die to the right, 10,000 to the left, but God will send you his anointed people to where they need to go. So what I want you to be thinking about when this is all over is I want you to sit down and pray and say, God, this is not all going to happen in a day or a week or a month. This is going to kind of be birthed over a period of time. But I'm going to encourage you to watch what's happening, to sit down and pray to the Lord. Lord, do you want me to stay where I'm at? Lord, do you want me to go someplace else? Lord, if you want me to go someplace else, where do you want me to go? But you need a starting point of understanding for what's happening with this geological, tsunami of earthquakes and volcanoes. So there's going to be 3 video clips that I'm going to play, and they're fairly long. You're going to see more video clips in this than you've ever seen in any show I've ever done. But that's the 40 or 50 hours of work that I did compressed down to maybe 10 minutes so that you can get the true high-level overview. So with that, let's go to the first slide, and then we'll go into the clips. Here's what's coming. And basically, I'm asking you a question. We're going to talk about the cataclysmic earth changes that are coming, and then I'm going to ask you to find out, to sit down and talk to God. Are you in the danger zone? Are you okay where you're at? Or you need to move? I think God will tell you if you sit down and if you pray to him and ardently ask, because if you ask, you will receive. So I'm just trying to give you the baseline information you need in order to go to the Lord and ask of him what he wants you to do. So let's go to that first clip, and then I'll be back at you after it's over.
Stop looking at the map for a moment. The map tells you where the destruction will happen, but it is useless without the most critical piece of intelligence: the timeline. Imagine you are sitting in your home in Los Angeles, or San Francisco, or Las Vegas. The ground is still. The sun is shining. You feel safe. You have no idea that 6,000 miles away, across a vast ocean, a geological fuse has just been lit, and the flame is racing towards you under the crust of the earth. For decades, skeptics have dismissed Edgar Cayce's prophecies as vague. They say, he predicted earthquakes, but earthquakes happen all the time. That is a lie. Edgar Cayce did not just predict earthquakes. In his most specific, terrifying reading, he gave us a binary trigger mechanism.
A magnitude 8.8 earthquake has triggered evacuations and tsunami warnings in both Russia and Japan.
An 8.8 magnitude earthquake, one of the strongest ever recorded, struck Russia's Far East early Wednesday.
The tremor struck Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, which is 250 kilometers away from Japan's Pacific coast.
And right on the cusp of colliding tectonic plates along the Pacific's notorious seismic ring of fire,
triggering tsunami waves in Japan and Alaska and prompting Pacific-wide warnings.
It's hard to believe, but nearly half the planet's population lives in the shadow of the Red Ring of Fire, a geological monster now stirring in terrifying new ways. Could this be the chain reaction that sets off the deadliest earthquake cycle in modern history? It curls unseen, circling 40,000 kilometers of ocean, a colossal scar stitched into Earth's crust. The red Pacific Ring of Fire, stretching from South America's southern tip, racing past red California's San Andreas Fault, sweeping across Alaska, Japan, and Indonesia down to New Zealand, is the planet's most violent stage. Here lie 3/4 of the world's volcanoes and 90% of all earthquakes, including every red megaquake magnitude 9.0 plus ever recorded, triggering quakes and volcanic eruptions. The system is a coiled spring, always on edge. Scientists are now tracking an alarming trend. Seismic swarms from Alaska to Indonesia, synchronized like the beats of a global drum. In 2024 to 2025, earthquake frequency rose sharply. Volcanoes long considered dormant, like Alaska's Mount Spur or Indonesia's Marapi, erupted with little warning. The fear that the ring's entire system may be entering a new red global seismic cycle. And here's the nightmare. The ring's cold, dense bedrock means seismic waves travel farther. A megaquake in one country doesn't just shake locals, it rattles nations across the Pacific. A red magnitude 9.0 Cascadia rupture could send tsunamis to Japan. A red Kamchatka quake can tilt Earth's axis itself. So we ask, is the Ring of Fire not just a regional threat, but the greatest planetary hazard humanity faces? Could we be standing at the edge of a global cascade where quakes, eruptions, and tsunamis strike in a relentless chain?
All right, folks, I want to make a caveat before we go on. And you notice in that very first part of the clip, it mentioned a name that's going to probably got people to raise their eyebrows. It mentioned Edgar Casey. Now, my opinion is he's a prophet that deserves to be looked at like any other current prophet. He's been dead for almost 100 years. I'm not talking about his spiritual beliefs, his religious beliefs. Everybody has their own belief system. I'm simply putting him in here because he made a number of predictions almost 50 years ago about the cycle that we're seeing right now, and everything that he said relevant to Earth changes seems to be happening today, seems to be in alignment with what the geologists are saying in terms of what's happening. And if you go to that very first picture where it showed the two volcanoes, what the scientists today are saying is that we're about to have a set of events that are so catastrophic that it's going to cause that red ring of fire to unzip, and activities happening around the world will affect activities happening halfway around the world. That's what's happening. Now, when we get further into this, in order that you understand the scientific implications of what we're talking about, I'm going to show you from what the geologists today are saying, not from somebody from 50 years ago, but what the geologists are saying that is the cause of what is happening. And by the time you're done, you're going to have a completely different understanding of what's going on than you have now, and it may just accidentally save your life. Let's go on down to the next slide. So here we are, and this broadens the picture just a little bit further. So what I want you to see is that what we're looking at there, that red circle, that's the Ring of Fire, and that's, I think, 80%, 90% of all the Earth changes that we see, both volcanoes and earthquakes are happening there. But look at all those yellow dots over in Africa and towards India. And if we do have this pole shift, Now, it's not likely, from what I'm hearing from the experts, going to be a catastrophic pole shift where the pole jolts and moves 5 or 10 degrees in one day and all the oceans spill out into the world. It's happening slowly, but it's triggering pressure on the Earth that's causing all these events to happen. So as we get further into this presentation, I'll let you understand why, for the first time in my life, we're seeing the activity that we see that's demonstrated on this slide right here.
Call when you are free and rested up. Later is okay. No rush.
Hold on. I forgot to put my phone on silent. Sorry about that, folks. Let's go to the next slide. So this is, I just got to be clear, this is from Edgar Casey's prophecies, and here's why I'm putting it in. He's the only one out there that's giving us a picture of where the greatest amount of damage is going to occur and where the safe places are. And what God is telling me, don't look at the man's total picture. Just look at what he's saying about earthquakes. And so he's saying that in terms of the United States, it's going to pop first probably in Japan, go down around the Ring of Fire, and probably go to Hawaii next. Then it'll come to California. He's saying that California, in terms of the United States, is going to be the first place to get a catastrophic event. And what the geologists are saying, they're confirming that, is that we're going to have the Cascadia, and we're going to have the area down along Los Angeles and San Francisco on the San Andreas Fault connect. And it's going to be a very catastrophic event. And the picture you see is not for today, not for tomorrow, not for 6 months from now, but over a protracted period of time, California is going to keep getting hit until a large portion of California is gone. And it's basically to the western edge of what used to be California. And a little side story. Several years ago, I went to a charity event and happened to be sitting next to a submarine captain. And he told me a story. He said that he was assigned to go under the continental shelf, under California. And he was able to take his ship 300 miles under California. So if that's the case, and I'm just saying if it's the case, then California is a giant shelf. And if it keeps getting hit and battered by earthquakes, we could see that picture potentially. Let's go back to the slide that we were on. And then what's happening, I know people will know about this. This picture down below is something that the religious community started talking about back in 2017 when we had eclipses that came across the United States. Then there was another set of eclipses that came across, and they created an X at New Madrid Fault. And what we need to tell you now geologically is that the largest earthquake in the United States proper, excluding Alaska, happened at the New Madrid Fault Zone. And there have been people for a long time saying that there's a fault under New York, a fault in the St. Lawrence Seaway, and then the New Madrid Fault down at the Boot Hill, Missouri. And they're one day going to unzip, and they will basically cause the Great Lakes to flood into the Mississippi River Valley and create that inland sea that you see predicted there. Now, whether that's a totally accurate picture, I don't know. It's based on elevations is what it's based on. And if you're in the elevations, like say where I'm at over towards where the Ozark Mountains are, I'm at 1,500 feet. I'm safe. But if you're down in Louisiana or down in Texas where you're at knee sea level, well, you're not so safe. So basically, that's what they're forecasting. And all this hype started to come around this particular conversation when we had those eclipses, and they just happened to create an X over the New Madrid Fault. And a little bit more about the New Madrid Fault. It's different than any other fault in the world, as far as I know. It's under the Mississippi River, under the Mississippi River aquifer, and it is basically what? A giant sea of sand and mud. And when that earthquake happened, it's not tectonic plates shifting, it's an underwater tsunami that blew sand and mud up in the air 150 feet, caused the Mississippi River to swell instantaneously by 20 feet, casting barges onto the shore, went 300 miles north to St. Louis, and changed the course of the Mississippi River, creating Horseshoe Lake. And the course of destruction is going to be down the path of least resistance, right straight down the channel of the Mississippi River. And that's what you're seeing there. So going back to recap this, so we start over, most likely, at least that's the prediction, in Japan, go down through Hawaii over to the west coast of the United States, taking out good portions, are doing significant damage in Los Angeles and San Francisco, and then eventually, in a very abrupt condition, California is flooded. And what the geologists say in terms of what could make that kind of event happen is over in the Canary Islands. There's a volcano over there that erupted a long, long time ago, and it caused a giant fissure. And if that was to have a volcanic eruption equivalent to what it had all that time back, it's possible that a good chunk of the Canary Islands could plunge into the ocean. And what it predicts if that happens is a tsunami of astronomical level that would literally flood, come in for miles and miles and miles into the coastline of the east coast of the United States. So what I want to do now is I want to basically talk about the text up above. And so what we're saying is the West Coast, let me go to that slide so I'm with you. The West Coast is broken up like you see in that picture. San Francisco and Los Angeles have a mega quake that does tremendous damage. The Great Lakes empty into the Gulf, which is what you see in that bottom left picture. New York and Connecticut are basically destroyed by a water event of some sort that happens like that, which is what happens when you have a tsunami. And the southern portion of California and of Carolina, rather, and Georgia are inundated. And then we go to land will appear in the Atlantic and the Pacific. So does that make sense? So around the world, the geologists say that land masses are going to be broken up and pieces of land are going to be sinking. And think of the world as a balance. As pressure shifts, as something rises, something else is going to, and something sinks rather, something else is going to rise. So that's basically information that I think you need to know about what's coming. And this is what I call, looking at it for spiritually now, is a purification. It's just like water purifies, snow purifies. God is getting ready to take us out from under the demonic control that we're in, and we're going to go to a new system. And we'll break this down further as we go on. The next slide's where you really need to pay attention, because this is going to talk to you about the pure science of what's making all this happen. So we have an event happening that happens very rarely, but it's happening, where every planet in the solar system is lined up in the sun, and that affects the sun, its gravitational pull. And the last time it was like this, to my knowledge, was in 1811, which happened to be when the Nemadrid fault popped. So there's something with the sun that has to do with triggering of earthquakes. And it also happens to be when we had a solar event. There were almost no electronic devices on the planet at that time, but we had the telegraph. And when we had that giant solar flare, it actually burnt the wires on the telegraphs and caused the poles and the wires to catch on fire. So that's one of the factors that's leading us into these very, very significant geological events. And then going to the right, the second is, now, there's people who say the earth is round, there's people who say the earth is flat, but I don't know of anybody that basically challenges the fact that it's tilted to some degree. The popular number is 23 degrees. Well, with all the ice that's been melting, it's trillions and trillions of tons of ice. We have an imbalance happening because the water is melting, being shifted around the world. And look at that picture down below. Now you think of a subduction plate going under a continental shelf, and what's happening as the water has shifted, that's a fulcrum that's pulling up that subduction plate under the continental plate, and that's what's igniting the ring of fire. So that's the second thing that's going on. That's what's going to ignite the ring of fire and cause things to be unzipped. Instead of it's just a singular event, it's going to be an event that has enough pressure that it just goes from fault zone to fault zone, erupting earthquakes and volcanoes and so on and so forth. And then we see down below 4,000 holes. And that's happening down in Florida. Go look. I think we got a clip that's going to show some of that. But basically, all over the world, we're having sinkholes. And that's because there's water under the ground, and as all these pressures are happening, it's affecting what's happening below the earth. And then we foolishly have been pulling water from our aquifers forever. And we now have created these mass voids down below, and the earth is simply saying, you've destabilized us. So these are the events that are happening, that are triggering these catastrophic events that are happening around the world. You've got some time, they're beginning to happen, but I'm trying to show you a pattern so that at some point in time you can sit down and talk to God and say, am I safe? Do you want me to move, Lord? What's going on? I'm trying to give you as big a picture as I possibly can. Let's go to the next slide. And what I'm going to say here,
California's coast just rose 6 feet overnight, and scientists are shocked by the hidden void they discovered, because what happened along hundreds of miles of coastline defies every law of geology and suggests something is deliberately hollowing out California from beneath. Picture beaches that were at sea level yesterday, now sitting 6 feet above the waves, harbors stranded high and dry, and marine life gasping on what used to be the ocean floor. This isn't erosion or normal coastal change. This is the land itself rising like a massive elevator, and it happened so fast that tide pools were left behind by the retreating sea. But here's what has geologists in complete panic. Deep underground scans reveal a massive geometric void, a hollow space the size of several city blocks that appeared beneath the coastline at the exact moment the land started rising. This void isn't natural. It's perfectly shaped, almost artificial, and it's filled with a substance that doesn't match any known geological material. Even more terrifying, similar voids are now appearing along fault lines throughout California, each one causing the ground above to buckle and rise. GPS stations that measure ground movement with millimeter precision are showing readings that should be impossible. Vertical displacement that normally takes thousands of years compressed into a single night. Is this the result of some unknown geological process? Or has something been deliberately excavating California from below? And could the entire state be about to collapse into these mysterious underground chambers?
Something is about to reshape the entire future of the West Coast. The coastline, the infrastructure, the whole map. Scientists fear there is not one but two big earthquakes coming, one caused by another. This wasn't even on the radar for most people, but new research is changing everything. For decades, everyone treated the San Andreas Fault and the Cascadia Subduction Zone like two separate monsters that just happened to live in the same neighborhood. They were powerful, yes, but independent. But now, scientists believe these two giant faults are mechanically linked, and one can literally pull the other into rupturing shortly afterward. Cascadia moves, San Andreas moves. San Andreas tears, Cascadia tears. And the potential consequences of that are honestly haunting. Scientists found evidence that it happened at least 10 times in the last 3,100 years. Earthquake, pause, earthquake. It comes from marine sediment cores, which are like time capsules pulled up from the ocean floor. Researchers analyzed layer after layer of seabed sediment and found doublets. Paired debris layers created by two massive quakes happening so close together that the ocean barely had time to settle between them. That discovery takes us to the Mendocino Triple Junction, the geological troublemaker of the West Coast. It's the place where three tectonic plates crash and grind into each other like badly aligned gears. It's also the zone where the San Andreas meets Cascadia, which makes it the perfect place for these double quakes to form. The stress changes caused by a rupture in one fault travel straight through this junction and destabilize the other. It's benign when it happens to a bookshelf. When you move one book, three others shift. But when you think about it like a coastline with millions of people, entire cities, major infrastructure, it instantly feels terrifying. To many people who live on the West Coast, the San Andreas kind of feels like a California's problem, and Cascadia like an Oregon and Washington's problem. But when you understand that these two faults can essentially fire at each other, it stops being a local issue and becomes a continental one. A Cascadia megaquake alone can hit magnitude 9.0 plus, rip open 600 to 700 miles of seafloor, and send a tsunami roaring toward the Pacific coast. And it could just be the first quake, and then, maybe minutes later, the San Andreas snaps in Northern California. The shaking could ripple down the state like a zipper tearing open a jacket, and if it goes the other direction, it could be just as bad. If the San Andreas ruptures first, the intense stress redistribution can destabilize the Cascadia subduction zone. You could get the California quake first with buildings rocking, highways breaking, and power stations failing. And then, soon after, the ocean pulls back in Oregon or Washington. And the 20-minute countdown to a tsunami begins, a follow-up disaster.
I got to give kudos to my producer. He caught me. I lost track of what slide we were on, so that clip was obviously supposed to come up instead of another slide. But I want to go back and put one other caveat on what you just saw. So the geologists are shaking their heads and saying, we don't understand what's going on. We just encountered something that's geologically impossible. And it's referring to the event that it shows you where the coastlines of California shifted and the tide pools were left high above the water. Ships were setting on sand, and before they had been on water because there was an uplift of about 12 feet, they said that can't happen without an earthquake. Yes, obviously it can. They're not figuring out how, but it just goes to show you we're in uncharted territories. Things are happening. There's pressure building up under the earth. It's not just the subduction plates, but it's what's happening with the water underneath that's lifting. And so basically, this is like nothing we've ever had. That's why I wanted to do this, because I want people to understand that we're moving into a swarm of earthquakes, a swarm of volcanic eruptions, and it's just going to be amazing. Let's go to the next slide, and I want to show you a little bit of what happens that I see. I want to break this down, and I want to say what I'm seeing from my primary focus, which is what? Geopolitical. I'm seeing that something is happening that actually ties into these earthquake events, and that is that the banks are going to be drastically affected by what's going on. Corporations are closing one by another and another and another. There's going to be a political alignment where we're going to have massive numbers of politicians taken out. And what I think is happening is you look at the retail market, and giants that you never saw would be in trouble are in trouble. And the big boxes are in trouble. Family restaurants are closing. I think what's happening is God is subtly telling us, you've been controlled by the mega corporations, by the mega banks, by the politicians that have been bought and sold. And I think he's basically creating a situation where he's saying, 70% of the world's population live on the coast. And I think that the coasts are going to be significantly damaged, which is going to cause people to migrate to the center. And with now new technologies that we have, there's no reason that those people need to live in those pressure cookers in New York and in Los Angeles and in Chicago. And I think we're already seeing an exodus, a total reversal of the demographics that have happened for the last 250 years. For 250 years, people went from the country to the city. And now I think they're uncoupled from the need to live in the city because they can do things remotely, and because new technologies mean that a lot of what we're doing now is manually is going to be taken over by technology. And I think God is trying to bring us back to where he forces this on us, for us to take a look at the materialism that we've allowed ourselves to get into and be controlled by. And the Bible says you can't serve two masters. So either you're going to serve God and spirituality, or you're going to serve mammon. And so what these two pictures are indicating is that I don't think anybody can repudiate this. If you live in the big cities, and this is a picture from New York, it's stressful and people are irritable, and there's a lot of pressure on people. But if we go back to our founding, people were grounded on the earth. If you go back to the American Indians, basically they talked about something grounding. They walked in very thin moccasins or barefoot, and they were grounded with the earth's vibrations. And basically what God is saying, they were more spiritual. They had time to basically to pray to what they considered to be their spirits. Well, in our case, we're going to say the Christians are basically praying to the Lord, to God, to Jesus. And I think God is going to move us out of those centers that are so focused on materialism. And then that picture down below is telling you something else about the nature of the earth. Basically, it's to what the Indians were saying. We're grounded. We now know that crystals are basically power units that basically conduct electricity. So what we're saying here is that everything that God makes is one giant lattice that's all connected. And if we go back to nature, then we have an opportunity to get out from under that stress, and an opportunity to have a slower life, and an opportunity to really get in touch with our Lord. So let's go to the verbiage that's on this slide. For a variety of reasons, there is a shift happening where people are leaving the chaos of the big cities and going to the country. And what I want to make a synopsis of, that's going to get us out from the control of the corporations. I think we're going to see an onslaught of entrepreneurial activity where individuals are starting their own companies, where they're growing their own food, where we then have autonomy and are not controlled by the powers that control us right now. And then let's go on down. Geologically, most of the upheavals that are happening are on the coast, because that's where the tectonic shifts are. That's where all the materialism is focused. And I think God is saying, I don't want my people focused first and foremost on materiality, because you can't serve two gods. Whoever you serve is going to be what controls you. He's telling us, step away from materialism, turn to spirituality, turn to me. And then let's go down to the last set here. So what I'm asking you to do is to pray and ask God where he wants you to be. Say, where are you, or where am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to move? Am I supposed to stay here? What is it that you want me to do, God? I'm just trying to wake people's eyes up so that as many souls as can be saved will be saved. And then I'm going to tell you about a prophecy. Remember, I was reared up and trained by prophets. When I moved to Branson, where I'm at right now, I came in contact with a prophet called Corey Tenbu, who prophesied that this area was going to be likened unto Goshen in Egypt. And there would be an area down in Arkansas where, coincidentally, she said, there was a traumatic event that happened and people would come en masse from the coast to the heartland where it's safe geologically. And one of the gathering places that they would go to was northern Arkansas. And then she said there was a place just a little north and to the southern part of Missouri where God would bring people to raise up, that he was going to send out, like me, that's why I think I'm here, to give warnings to people as all of these events happened, so that they would have foreknowledge of what was coming. God says, I never do anything unless I warn my prophets. So I'm trying to warn you that God is saying there are going to be events that are going to happen that are going to cause a mass migration to the center of the country. And as we go further, we're going to indicate and show where those safe harbors are. So let's go to the clip. All right, I guess I'm off again. Let's go to the next slide. My producer is more on cue than I am. So let me go down to that and get it up on my computer. And what we've got is, we're talking about safe harbors, and we're talking about this is a purification. When things like this happen, there's a tendency for people to say, why did God do that? Why did he allow it to happen? He's trying to draw us closer to him, closer to spirituality, to where we can get back to the pulse of the nation, where we can get back to spiritual development. And he's orchestrating everything geopolitically so that we have the opportunity and the time to devote to spiritual development. Now, this is what you've been waiting for. This is just about the last of this segment. There's one more clip to play after this. So here's what he's saying. Generally speaking, these are the safe havens. And this is what I want you to pray about. He says, this is the heartland. This is a place that geologically, there aren't any faults, where geologically there's either granite or there's limestone deposits that make that portion that I'm about to talk about stable. That's Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. Now, Missouri is a little bit questionable, and so is Arkansas. So I want to go on down southern Canada. I want to go back to Missouri and back to Arkansas. So they're going to be affected by the New Madrid fault zone. Mostly Missouri is the one that gets affected by that. However, If you go over to the left, the western portions of Missouri, if you go back and look at that map, we get into the Ozark Mountains, and we are in elevations that protect us from that earthquake and protect us from the flooding. So let's go on down. Safety is more than a location. So what God is doing is calling us to bend the knee. What everything that's happening geopolitically around the world, politically around the world, is to make people stop, to make people think, to make people turn to the Lord, to bend the knee. And he wants to bring spiritual revival around the world. So what he's basically saying to us is, don't think of this as punishment. Think of this as a purging. Think of this as me giving you an opportunity to have a quieter life, a more centered life, a life where you can dedicate time to spirituality, dedicate time to basically developing who you are as a person and getting alignment with God, with Jesus, with whatever spiritual thing that you have that you need to basically build into who you are. So it's a spiritual grounding, and that's what's coming. I don't want you to think of any of this, because when somebody happens, when somebody loses a spouse, when somebody gets sick, when an earthquake happens and somebody dies, we have a tendency to blame God. But God's the master of everything. He knows everything. It always happens for a reason. And in this instance, what I want to close on is to say it's a purging. It's getting us out of the chaos that it has on the two coasts and bringing us to basically safe harbor. And so please sit down and pray. There's another segment of this. We'll do that tomorrow. But we've got one more clip for you to hear, and then I'm going to come back and wrap all this up. Let's go to the next clip.
Exhibit A, the physical prognosis, a planet in convulsion. Let us be clear about the physical symptoms Casey diagnosed. He did not speak in vague metaphors. He spoke like a seismologist of the soul. In reading 3976-15, one of his most famous, he stated, quote, "The earth will be broken up in the western portion of America. The greater portion of Japan must go into the sea. The upper portion of Europe will be changed as in the twinkling of an eye." In another, reading 1152-11, his gaze focused on the United States with chilling specificity. Watch New York, Connecticut, and the like. Many portions of the East Coast will be disturbed, as well as many portions of the West Coast, as well as the central portion of the United States. Los Angeles, San Francisco will be among those that are destroyed, even before New York. He spoke of a pole shift, not as a sudden flip, but as a gradual and calamitous process that would trigger these changes. He saw the ice caps melting at a rate considered impossible at the time. He saw the Gulf Stream shifting, plunging Northern Europe into a new climate reality. The first sanctuary Casey identified lies, paradoxically, in the very heart of the nation he warned was most at risk. While he foresaw great destruction for the coasts, the breaking apart of the West and the inundation of the East, he consistently pointed to the central portions of the United States and Canada as a bastion of geological and spiritual safety. The what? The Great Plains, the regions nestled against the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains, and the stable interior landmasses away from the major coastal and New Madrid fault lines. He was specific about areas in Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, and the vast plains of Canada. Crucially, he also identified his own home of Virginia Beach. He stated that after initial inundations that would destroy much of Norfolk, Virginia Beach itself would survive to become a safe and important coastal port in a newly shaped America. In a reading for a man terrified of the coming changes, a man who asked where he should flee, Casey stated, in essence, "You can be in the safest geographical place on earth, yet if your own mind is a storm of fear, of anger, of selfishness, you will create your own private cataclysm. A tree will fall on your house. You will stumble into a ravine. You will attract disaster to your doorstep. Conversely, You can be in the midst of the greatest chaos, in a city that is crumbling. Yet if your heart and mind are perfectly aligned with the divine will, with the spirit of love and service, a path of safety will be carved for you through the turmoil.
All right, I want to recap, and then we'll be finished and come back and see us tomorrow. So I want to take you back in my history. You know, I had a near-death experience in '68. It wasn't all that long after that when God said, you gotta study. I'm going to have you prepared for your entire life. Read the Bible, read the Quran, read a multitude of things. I had no idea. And he would tell me to read it and I'd read it. So I studied geology probably 40, 50 years ago. And in that process, how I came across Casey was because he was talking about geological events. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about his spiritual beliefs. I'm talking about the geological prognostications that he made. And I went out and I started doing research. And ironically, there was a book that I found from 3 geologists who said, we're gonna debunk what this man says. And they went out and for those of you who don't know, there's something called a tectonic substructure map, just like a topography map that shows you the elevation of the surface of the earth. A tectonic substructure map, which we can now do with penetrating radar, shows us the structure of the earth below the surface. And with all of that, they came back and instead of debunking him, they said every place he said there was going to be a catastrophe, there's a fault. There's instability down below. And so they said he pinpointed all of the places that we're gonna have encounters, we're gonna have problems. So what makes Casey unique is that he was a Christian, he was a Sunday school teacher, but he got off into some things spiritually that people who are devout Christians have some questions with. But basically, when it came to the latter part of his life, he did these earth changes, and he was incredibly accurate. Those people had to come back, and they wrote that through those 3 geologists wrote the books and says, it appears he's right on track. Well, I put it aside. Remember, I have that long-term memory, and I didn't do anything with it because I said it isn't relevant today. It just has nothing to do with today. And now we come to the convergence of the past with the present, where everything that he said decades ago is now happening. And now we have the scientists. So you saw a lot of what I showed in these videos was coming from geologists, from seismic readings, from understanding of the tectonic subplates, from understanding of where the fissures are. And most people don't know that there are far more volcanoes than we think they are. The vast majority of volcanoes are under the ocean on the Ring of Fire. And if it all unzips, we're looking at some absolutely catastrophic events that are going to be happening, folks. So I just want you to understand that I'm trying to tie disparate pieces of information together. Prophecies from 50 or more years ago tied to occurrences that are happening today, tied to scientific evidences that we have with coming from the geologists and saying it's all coming together and it's all part of what God is planned to basically take the focus of mankind off of materialism and take it and turn it onto spirituality, where what he's going to do is collapse our financial systems. He's going to change the political system of the world. He said that he can raise kings. He can bring nations down in a day. He can change things in the twinkling of an eye. And I'm just trying to say we're coming into that period. And what it's all about is getting us to turn our eyes from materialism to spirituality, turn back to God, bend the knee, and he's going to basically use America to basically open the eyes of the world. And I want to close by saying what is unique about America, because we are, in a sense, the cradle of our current generations. We came from Europe. We came from feudalism. We came from a period of time and a place in the world where there was constant fighting, where everybody had different religious beliefs and different cultural beliefs, and where there was constant war. And he said, I'm going to take a new piece of land all the way across the world, and I'm going to bring people from all over the world who don't get along in their native environments, and put them in a situation where they're going to have to learn to live together. That's where we brought all these people in from Europe, from China, from all over, and they were forced to assimilate into the uniquely American culture, a culture that wasn't feudalism, that wasn't capitalism, that wasn't communism, which was a new form of government that God wanted to form, a republic, a government of the people, by the people, for the people, which forced people to work together in unison and in harmony for the greater good of all the people. It required that we had to be educated, that we had to know the truth. So we had pamphleteers who, unlike our fake news, would tell us the truth. Our pastors weren't muffled by 501c. They were able to stand on the pulpit and talk about political situations. And at the end of the day, the people were educated and they were informed. And when they voted, they had enough knowledge and enough understanding that they could vote for what was in the best interest of their district, the best interest of their state, the best interest of the nation, because they weren't voting for people who were going to give them handouts. Benjamin Franklin said, the minute that people understand that they can get money from the public coffer in the form of entitlements, it's just a matter of time till the nation collapses under debt, and before everything falls apart, and before control mechanisms come in that ruin the plan of what God. So we've been the number one target to basically collapse throughout the last 250 years, so that the feudalists over in Europe could get back control of the power structure that they had for so long. So basically, God is looking at the United States and saying, I'm going to open your eyes politically. I'm going to show you that elections have been stolen. I'm going to show you that bankers have been controlling you. I'm going to show you that corporations have been controlling you. I'm going to open your eyes so the truth can set you free. That's what's coming, and along with that comes a purging, and along with that comes an opportunity to get out from the power structures that we're under, and to basically move to quieter, safer places, and give us time, because of technology, to basically focus on spiritual development. This is a pinnacle period in the history of mankind, and God is knocking at your door. And all I'm trying to do here is, he just kept saying to me for weeks and weeks, go tell this story. It might be a little difficult for you to tell, because when you use that word ago, Casey, a lot of people are going to be upset, but I don't care. I have to have the courage to deliver the messages that God gives me. And in this instance, it's not about anybody's politics. It's about what God is doing on the face of this earth to pull together the people that he wants to usher in peace and prosperity on this planet. So with that, I hope this helps you. I hope you'll pray. I hope you keep informed and watch what the earth changes that are happening. And I've given you a sequence. So basically, you want to look at what happens in Japan. You want to look at how the Ring of Fire unzips, moving from Japan to Hawaii, from Hawaii to the United States, from the West Coast to the East Coast to the center of America, over to Europe, etc. And if any of you, lose control of focusing on this, when the first or second event comes, hopefully it'll open your eyes and you'll pay attention, and you'll sit down and you'll bend in your knee and you'll say to God, what are you telling me? What are you telling me? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? So I'm taking a little bit of a risk by delivering this message in the way I have, but I know what God tells me to do. And what he says is, if you will be my steward and you will deliver this message, lives will be saved. People will grow spiritually in a way that they can't grow in the big cities on the coast. So with that, thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow.